Welcome to Inside Sport Fishing. I'm Michael Folks, and thanks for joining us as we climb on board one of the finest sport fishing yachts ever built, Bill McWethy's incredible 75-foot custom-built Titan, which virtually defies description, with legendary skipper Pete Grosbeck behind the helm, working our local waters for tuna, dorado, and marlin.
Woo! How are you doing? That's sick. That is absolute sickness right there. Oh, I'm never going home. There you go.
Proudly brought to you by Ford. Ford Trucks, built Ford tough. Ford, the official trucks of Inside Sport Fishing. And by Shimano, makers of the finest fishing tackle in the world. Fish with the best. Fish Shimano. And by Power Pro. Experience the Power Pro advantage. Power Pro. Proven power.
Welcome back to Inside Sport Fishing. I'm Michael Folks, and thanks for joining us. And before we get back to the action, I wanted to take just a few minutes and introduce you to the single most innovative piece of marine equipment I've ever seen in my life. If you've ever fished the ocean, the chances are, on more than one occasion, you've gotten the living crap kicked out of you. But with this equipment, all you have to do is flip the switch, and it's as if the hand of God has literally come down from the heavens and is cradling your boat. The Seakeeper gyro eliminates 70 to 90% of a boat's roll in an all-internal system with nothing outside the hull. Right now, we're heading south to the Cabo Yacht Center for an inside look at retrofitting a pair of these incredible machines into Dick Landfield's beautiful 68-foot Hatteras. And as Grant Houcken explains, the future is here.
We're installing Seakeeper gyros on board 68-foot Hatteras, Dick Landfield's boat, Rio Quest. And on this particular installation, the 68-foot Hatteras is quite a tall, heavy boat with an enclosed flybridge. The Seakeeper Model 8000 handles up to 35 tons, or about a 65-foot boat. On this particular boat, because of its size and its height, we're installing two Seakeeper Model 8000s. The application is linear, and each Model 8000 handles up to 35 tons. So by putting two of these units in the 68, we're going to get excellent stabilization and roll reduction. Due to the configuration of this vessel, it was much more feasible to do two of our smaller units, the Model 8000s, on centerline because of the available space versus one of the large units. The most important thing is taking into account what space is available, where the gyros can be structurally bonded to the hull. That's the most important part. The location of the gyro does not matter at all. The only requirement is that it is bonded structurally to the hull. Inside the sphere, we have a very heavy spinning flywheel. And that flywheel, it's like a top. It wants to stay upright at all times. There's stored kinetic energy, and as the boat rolls, the gyro processes forward and aft, and that counteracts that roll and dampens that roll before it even starts. And that's what provides the roll reduction. The Seakeeper gyro, as I mentioned, has a spinning flywheel inside the sphere. And in that sphere, we operate that flywheel in a vacuum so that it's very low air resistance and the noise is kept down because you don't have air friction. And that requires much less power. It's a very low power consumption unit in order to get it spooled up and keep it operational. Our units only require 3 kW to spool up and about 1 to 1.5 kW to stay operational. Now that spinning flywheel, as I mentioned, it's stored kinetic energy. So as the vessel rolls, because that frame of the gyro is structurally bonded to the hull, that gyro wants to stay upright. So as the vessel rolls to port or starboard, the gyro will precess forward or aft. And that precession is creating torque as it precesses. And that torque is the righting force that keeps the boat level. It's like if you were to spin a top on a tabletop and try and knock it over. You can't knock it over if it's spinning at a high rate of speed. Since 2008, when we first started selling and shipping gyros, we sold over 1,500 gyros on over 130 different boat brands. And About 40% of our business is refits, and many manufacturers around the world, including Azimut, Princess, Sea Ray, just to name a few, are putting us in at the factory level, as well as Viking and many of the sport fish manufacturers. We've designed it to be very versatile since refits are a big part of our business. So in this particular installation, we wanted to be as non-invasive as possible. Gyro can be broken down completely and the sphere removed to break it down to the smallest possible dimension. And in this application, we were able to break that gyro down to just the right size to fit through the engine hatch without having to cut big holes in the boat or do any major modifications. It was a very non-invasive type operation. We were the first manufacturer to offer a gyro operated inside a vacuum, and the reason we did that is to bring the power consumption down dramatically so it doesn't draw nearly as much power as if you were operating that gyro in open air. It also takes substantially less time to spool it up, and you get much better stabilization out of a smaller unit because you can spin a larger flywheel at a higher rate of speed.
Much less noise too, right?
Much less noise. So operating that gyro inside of a vacuum, we had to cool the bearings, and we also had to operate bearings inside this completely sealed vessel in a vacuum. And so a lot of those concepts have been used for many, many years by NASA in the space station, as well as the Hubble telescope. And so those concepts being around for as long as they have, we pulled from a lot of that information and a lot of that knowledge base to design the Seakeeper gyro and create our patented bearing, vacuum, and cooling system that we use today. It's a very low maintenance unit because the Seakeeper gyro has very few moving components, very few mechanical components. And the warranty is a 2-year, 2,000-hour warranty. And we have a global network of certified service and installation centers everywhere from here in Mexico up through the United States and Canada and all around the globe in places like Asia and Australia. We have Seakeeper certified representatives and service technicians available for servicing your vessel anytime. It is the wave of the future.
Welcome back to Inside Sport Fishing. I'm Michael Folks, and thanks for joining us. Last week, we introduced you to the single most incredible piece of marine equipment I've ever seen in my life. And before we get back to the action, let's take just a minute and hear from one of the most respected and talented skippers in the world, Pete Grossbeck, as he tells us a little bit about what it's like having a Seakeeper on board.
We're on the 75-foot Titan, and today we want to talk about quickly about the Seakeeper that's on it. This boat's 2.5 years old, and it's one of the first Seakeepers that was on the west coast here in California. And we are very impressed with the whole operation of the Seakeeper. It has really helped us in our fishability. We live bait a lot, we go slow, which puts us in the trough. And now basically there is no trough, and we were able to knock out 75 to 80% of the roll. And after a period of few days after fishing 4, 5, 6 days, you find out that you're not fighting the weather as much, and you're a lot more rested, and the boat doesn't work as hard, and it's a very good piece of equipment. So I've been running boats out of San Diego, California, and all over the South Pacific and Mexico. In 1984, I went up to Tacoma for a year and a half and oversaw the construction of the first mothership operation. And we took that all over the Pacific, down to Costa Rica and Panama and Hawaii and Tahiti and all over French Polynesia and Tonga, Fiji, and then the boat went to Vanuatu and Australia and New Zealand. And what we had back then was we had the fin stabilizers, and it had been a lot better operation and a lot better ride if we had it. The units sell themselves, and it's an amazing piece of equipment. I mean, there's a lot of boats in there, and they're expanding their range from a lot smaller to a lot bigger. I think there's 2 sizes bigger. This used to be the biggest unit. There's 2 sizes bigger now, 2.5 years after we built this boat. So the company is really strong and going in the right direction. It's been a good ride, and what's made it a lot more comfortable, again, it's the Seakeeper. And
a lot of commercial guys are starting to look at them.
Yeah, there's some light boats that are looking into it. We took out some guys today that from city of San Diego that do the research. They do soundings, and they trawl nets, and they take water samples, and they service buoys, and they lose a lot of days where they can't get out. Plus, they have an A-frame. They're hauling up these 600-pound anchors, and they're rolling all over the place, and it's a really dangerous situation. And they'll probably be putting them in there, and the Seakeepers also put in, I'm not sure how many, but in the torpedo retrievers the Navy has, for the same reason as the safety factor. They put them in a few of those boats, and there's an amazing piece of equipment, and the company keeps building and making better equipment. The service that they have is phenomenal. I think Viking right now is that they're almost to the point where they're doing it standard in their boats. I mean, it's an option, but there's not too many Vikings that go out right now without them in it because it makes such a difference. And the ones that are out are come back and get retrofitted anyway. And when you're building a boat, it's a lot easier to put one in when you're building them. But the product's only good as a service. And that's I make one phone call, and if I leave a message, I don't, maybe an hour or two max before somebody calls me back, and then there's somebody on the phone, and the service has been phenomenal. We haven't had to do much of it, but there's always somebody to talk to if you have a problem, a question, and that's half the battle, I think. So again, it's a great unit, and it speaks for itself. And you can talk all you want about it until you go out and actually see it work. It's amazing. When you're out for tuna stop, and the boat's rolling all over the place, you put your rod down and it doesn't even fall down. It's amazing. It is really a good piece of equipment. And like I said, we use it in Mexico when we're down in Cabo, and when it leaves here, we don't shut it off unless we're in for 3-4 days. And it's just amazing piece of equipment. For example, fishing sea bass, with the current screaming downhill, fishing the coast and the big west swell, and you lay in the trough and you look around, these guys are just rolling their what's off, and we're sitting there just steady as can be. So it's phenomenal. You have to see it. So basically the sea trials speak for themselves. Once you activate this thing and turn it on, the sea trial's over.